Well, good morning. Good afternoon, I should say. This is David Lancaster, the chairperson of the Waukesha County Area Technical College District Board of Trustees, and this is the September 8th, 2020 District Board meeting. This time we'll officially call the meeting to order at 5:01 p.m. Jennifer, can you walk us through the navigational points?
Yep. Hi. As Chairperson Lancaster said, welcome to the September 8th WCTC District Board virtual meeting. This meeting is being recorded. Please note that all attendees' microphones are muted unless you have completed the steps to address the board through public remarks. Specific instructions to submit that request to address the board were outlined on the board agenda. Also stated on the board agenda, public remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person for a total of 15 minutes. And at this time, I'm going to do a quick introduction of the board members for the public. So board members, when I call your name, just say a quick hi so they know who you are. Chairperson Lancaster.
Here.
Courtney Bauer.
Here.
Michael Weeb.
Here.
Brian Baumgartner.
Here.
Joe Garza.
Here.
Alan Karch.
Here.
Tom Mahalski.
Here.
Katie Pansloff.
Here.
And Julie Valadez.
Here.
Okay. Thank you, board members. Next, presenters, you should state your name prior to speaking so the public can identify who is speaking. Board members, presenters, and public, please do not use the chat feature during this meeting. Lastly, there is a closed session on the agenda for tonight. The closed session is scheduled to last till about 8:15 or 8:30. At this time, the public will temporarily be disengaged from this portion of the Zoom meeting. The public will be re-engaged in the meeting to hear any motions that the board has made during closed session. And that concludes my introduction. Chairperson Lancaster.
Thank you, Jennifer. At this time, I'll ask if there's any public staff remarks.
There are none.
Hearing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item, the WCTC update on college activities. Kaylin.
Thank you, Chairperson Lancaster. Well, a lot of things going on. The first one I would like to go through is we have a system that's called RAVE. RAVE provides alerts to our college community, our students and staff and board members. If you sign up for the RAVE alerts. RAVE alerts, everything goes from that you're called or your text regarding if the college closed because of weather conditions or power outage, or if there is an active shooter on campus. It's a very robust system. And if you would like to sign up for it, Jennifer Thomas will be sending you a link to the RAVE for you to do that. It's very self-explanatory, and encourage you to do that if you want to keep up to date on what things are happening on campus. So it's not used for general announcements, only for those things that are major. Second is I wanted to just give a shout out to David Brown and to Chris Daode. David is putting weekly updates to the college community on the COVID-19 situation and any other additional information for people, for staff to know. And he does them religiously on Fridays, and I think they're a great way of continuing to communicate with our college of what is happening and what areas we need help on, whether it's people wearing masks or social distancing. So thank you, David, for doing that. Also, shout out to Chris Daode, who also provides daily updates to students via text. Again, this is reminding them of wearing their mask and social distancing, but also things that are specific to students. It might be financial aid cutoffs and different things as well. They've been very well received by our student population, and continuing to keep people communicated with during this very unusual time in our lives is very important. So Chris, thank you for all the time that you take in putting that together. The next thing is this month is Hispanic Heritage Month. On September 22nd from 12 to 1, there'll be a Zoom session with Javier Avila. Javier is, for the past years, has been an educator and an artist, and has performed his smash hit, The Trouble with My Name. He's provided that across the country. And if anyone is interested in participating in that Zoom, that was sent out to the college community from the Minority Resource Center, Rolando de Leon. And so everyone on campus knows, but if you're a board member and would like to take part of that, please email or text Jennifer Thomas, and she'll get that information to you for you to participate. Again, that's September 22nd, and it's from 12 to 1 via Zoom. The last is a shout out to the fitness center staff. They started in the spring offering daily fitness activities really for when we were all in shutdown, lockdown mode. Very stressful time for our staff. And this provided a great outlet. Christy Farmer got known for her cat, who did appear in all of these Zoom fitness sessions. I don't know how buffed up the cat is, but might be worth looking into on a Zoom. But they are offering those again, these daily fitness activities for staff at various times to help with health and well-being for our staff individuals. So want to thank them a lot for doing that. I know staff have sent many appreciative notes of doing that. You're not actually seen on camera when you're doing the fitness activities. That's a really good thing for me. But Christy and the staff there have really done some great things to keep our college community connected and also healthy, and a well-being check-in as well. So I want to thank them for all of their efforts in that area. Thus ends my report, Chairperson Lancaster, unless there are any questions.
Any questions for Kaylin? Very good. Thank you, Kaylin, for your report. We appreciate that.
You're very welcome.
Next topic on the agenda is the WCTC Foundation Board. Brian.
Thank you, Chairperson Lancaster. I'm excited to be part of the WCTC Foundation Board. Last month, I attended my first board meeting, and everyone was extremely welcoming, and I'm looking forward to helping out any way possible. A couple of points I wanted to report on from our meeting is that overall fundraising, the foundation received just over $87,000 in donations for the first 2 months of fiscal year 2020-2021. Scholarship distribution is up from last year at the same time, which indicates that scholarships applications were completed earlier by the students. And lastly, the foundation board met on August 25th. The meeting focused on investment strategy, the sale of the Morris Street building, and the need to upgrade the foundation's donor record system. That's all I have, Chairperson Lancaster.
Very good. Any questions for Brian? Brian, thanks a lot for your report. And I think on behalf of the board, we thank you for taking on this role. Lots of good work been done in the course of the last 12 to 18 months with the foundation, and certainly with Ellen and Kaylin's leadership, Jane's leadership, and many others. So we look forward to your reports, and thank you for serving in this capacity. At this time, the next agenda item is the approval of consent agenda items. Is there any board member at this time that would like to bring any of points A through D forward for discussion? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion for approval.
Joe Garza, so moved.
Thank you,
Michael
Joe.
Weeb, second.
Thank you, Michael. We require a roll call vote on this. Jennifer, if you can walk through the members, please.
Sure can. Chairperson Lancaster,
Aye.
Courtney Bauer,
Aye.
Michael Weeb,
Aye.
Brian Baumgartner,
Aye.
Joe Garza,
Yes.
Alan Karch,
Aye.
Thomas Mahalski,
Aye.
Katie Fansloff,
Aye.
Julie Valadez. Julie?
Julie, I believe you're on mute.
Aye. Sorry, I said aye.
Very good. Motion carries. Thank you. Next agenda item in the action item section is the resolution of approving the remodeling of existing facilities, the pole barn project, and requesting approval by WTCS. Jeff Leverance.
This is Jeff Leverins. I think we're at this action item. I'm getting a lot of unstable internet connection errors here, so I'm going to try talking, but I guess if somebody could let me know if that's not working, then we'll have to try something different here. But this is the pole barn renovation project. Last month, Michael Shields explained to you how the pole barn was going to be turned into an educational training facility. The primary groups that will be using it will be the carpentry and electrical groups, and it'll be both the dual enrollment and our WCTC classes using that facility. This is your first approval request for this. The budget we're looking at for this project is $300,000. With your resolution approval tonight, this will be going before the state board in about a week. And then it'll be looked at by the state board, and if they give their approval, I'll be coming back to the WCTC board in October with the construction bids so we can go ahead with the second approval. Mike and his team are looking to have this construction project done as quickly as possible because of the number of students they have in these programs. So we're hoping to have it done for the start of classes in January for the spring semester. Hopefully that went through. I don't know. I don't see anything here. So are there any questions?
Jeff, I believe we were picking you up without an issue there. Is there any questions for Jeff? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Oh. Brian Baumgartner, I'll make a motion.
Alan Karch, I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Brian and Alan. Jennifer, can you help us out with a roll call vote, please?
Chairperson Lancaster,
Aye.
Courtney Bauer,
Aye.
Michael Weeb,
Aye.
Brian Baumgartner,
Aye.
Joe Garza,
Aye.
Alan Karch,
Aye.
Thomas Mahalski,
Aye.
Katie Fansloff,
Aye.
Julie Valadez.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have two presentations slated for this evening. The first will be an update on the presidential search. So we'll turn it over to Paul, Gabriel, and Don Stevens.
Hi, this is Paul Gabriel reporting for Paul and Don. Good evening, everybody. We are in a place in the search where the board has considered a subset of the 60 applications, and from that based on a rating on a rubric that matched the qualifications and experiences and skills sought, selected a group for interviews. The board over 2 weeks conducted a series of 1-hour interviews with some very talented candidates. Those results will be discussed tonight in a closed session following this open meeting. The number that were interviewed and still in consideration is not such that they would be considered finalists yet, either by the board's decision that they're finalists or by state law. And so it is still confidential at this point. So we will look forward to meeting with the board tonight and to moving the process forward. We are obviously in discussions as well on what finalist activities would look like, and continue to seek to do that in a way that's most inclusive of the community, faculty, and staff, despite the circumstances. So we'll look forward to any questions. Otherwise, that's our report.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank
Any
you.
questions for Paul or Don on the update? Well, gentlemen, again, thank you for the progress to date and the hard work behind the scenes, and we'll look forward to our discussions in a few moments later. Next up, Victor Brenner to discuss enrollment and updates and trends. So Victor, the floor is yours.
Okay, are you seeing my slides?
We are.
Excellent. So I was asked to talk about fall enrollment briefly today, and so I will do that. I'm only going to be talking today about credit enrollment. For one thing, 90% of all enrollment is credit, but also because credit enrollment is not accessible at the start of the term, it accrues during the course of the term, so we really don't have very much to look at this point. I will start off by talking about summer, and you can see that we had a very good summer. We were up 10% in FTE and slightly ahead in headcount as well over the summer term. This was, of course, one of the things that we had wanted to have happen and why we went to the 8-week calendar, that we wanted to see increased utilization of the summer term, and that had happened this last summer in spite of everything else. For the fall, as of September 1st, which is the most recent point in time snapshot for comparison, we were looking to be down 2.2% in FTE for the fall, and then down 7.4% in terms of headcount. But I want to actually spend a little more time talking about enrollment patterns. So here you can see we've been tracking at various points in time where we were this current term versus the previous 2 years. On the first day of classes, our FTEs was within 1% of where it was last year. But you can see that last couple of years, we saw a little bit of an uptick between the start of the term and the start of September. And then it's not entirely clear. There's a slight increase in headcount, but the FTEs, there's a little bit of a downward slope thereafter. And that isn't what happened this year. This year, we were essentially flat, as you can see for yourself, between the first day of classes and the start of September. But there's a couple of things that could be going on here. For one thing, this isn't just that students are not enrolling, but that there's students withdrawing and as well as enrolling. So since the first day of classes, we have added about 200 enrollments in fall term 2 classes, but we also have about 250 drops in fall term 1 classes. So under a 16-week calendar, a student can drop a class and get at least a partial refund up to the point that 10% of the course time has passed, which falls anywhere between the 11th to the 15th day of the term, depending on when the class started and on how often it meets. Under the 8-week calendar, that time period is only 5 days. So what I think one of the things we're likely seeing is that students are withdrawing at an accelerated pace because that's the shorter window for getting a refund. As such, one of the things I think we might see is that this starts to actually creep up a little bit, because in the past, once the semester is underway, there's really not a lot of opportunity to add courses after that. But now with the 8-week terms, we will have students up until something like the 3rd week of October. There's still some opportunity for them to be adding classes. And so we're hoping to see that the pattern looks a little bit different over time with that opportunity. Now, the message from the beginning has been that students should enroll in both Fall 1 and Fall 2. And we think that that mostly has happened. When the semester started, enrollments in Fall 2 classes stood at about 90% of enrollments in Fall 1 classes. So although it's obviously possible some students are in only one or the other, for the most part, it seems like the message came out that they should be enrolled in both. And so we're not really expecting to see a huge jump, but we also don't know what to expect. And actually our students don't either. This is the first time we've had 8-week terms. Some students may have enrolled in too many courses. Some students may not have enrolled in very many, wanting to wait and see how it would go. So we really are going to have to take a look to see how it plays out as we go forward. Also, we do know that the unemployment rate has gone up considerably from a year ago, even if it's a little bit unclear exactly where it stands. In the past, what we have seen is when we have increases in unemployment, we start to attract some students that were working and maybe are taking classes, but they're not necessarily completely committed to it. And so we sometimes see a little bit of a decline in our retention rates. So we may actually see a little bit more withdrawal than we've seen the past semester. And of course, we won't really know if that's related to the 8-week terms or the type of students we've been pulling. We're a little bit flying blind just because up until the start of the term, we've kind of seen that before, but now that we're in the term, we don't have any precedents to look at to see what the enrollment patterns are going to look like. You will, however, notice that the FTE line is much closer to the 2020 line than the headcount line. And that is because our average credits per student is up. Now, that is probably the main thing we were trying to achieve with moving to the 8-week calendar, was to have our students taking more credits, and that's happening. Students are up about 5.7% from last year in terms of their average credit load this fall. And as you can see in previous terms, that the average credits per student has tailed off after the start of the term. We're hoping that we may actually see that this number stays flatter than it did last year. But again, we don't really have a good comparison point to project what's likely to expect. So this is what the current projection is. And I call it projection mostly because I don't have a better word for it. Really, all I'm able to do this year is look to see where we stand in our current year-to-date status, and then roll that forward to what would happen in the case of a full year. And so because we had a good summer, our FTE at the bottom is actually almost level with where it was a year ago. And then our head count is down to about 7%. And so we don't really know how spring will happen, but we do know last spring that we lost about 2-ish% of our initial enrollments due to students withdrawing when COVID hit. And we're right now looking to be down about 2% for fall. So what I'm saying is that spring may have already been kind of a little bit lower last year. That makes it a more favorable comparison. So actually being within 1% may be a pretty good indicator of where we may end up when all is said and done. So that's where we stand for fall. Do you have any questions for me?
I have a question, if I may.
Yes.
Back to the head count, if you could go one more back, yeah. The 5,176, is that specifically for the first of the 2 sessions within this?
No, those are both all students enrolled during the entire of the fall semester. There are still some 16-week classes that are running. These are students that enrolled in Fall 1 and or Fall 2. And then we also have some sort of atypical schedules as well. This is everyone who's enrolled this fall.
Thank you.
Victor, Joe, please go ahead.
Yeah, just one of the questions that I had, and maybe it's not, if you don't have the information now, that's okay. But just, I'm curious as to what the virtual learning options have done, if that's broken out here. As I understand it, and maybe Brad can kind of help respond to this as well. Is there a disaggregation of online versus face-to-face? Has there been, I'm assuming there's been an increase of online learning options or no, but I do know that there's got to be some hands-on learning, obviously, depending on the circumstance. But can somebody just kind of speak to that briefly?
So we obviously have a lot more courses that are being offered online, but a large number of them are conversions. So those are courses when they were originally posted, they had some other format, and they've been then converted to be online as a result of the COVID-19. And we actually have a special tracking code we're using on those sections to keep them distinct from the classes that were always intended to have been online sections. So we haven't really looked at this on the enrollment side simply because we know we're offering, significantly more. Usually about 6% of our sections are offered in an online format. And this semester, if you conclude the ones that are switched because of the COVID-19, I want to say it's something between 25 and 30%. So obviously we'll have much, much greater enrollment in those kinds of classes. We haven't really taken a look to see if there's what the enrollment by section looks like. I think the thing we might be interested in eventually is to take a look at the retention, but those numbers we wouldn't have available yet.
If I can add to that a little bit, part of this is Brad Piazza, Vice President of Learning. One of the things that needed to happen with our delivery and moving to the 8-week terms is just really the development of a lot of hybrid delivery. Hybrid meaning that content that could be delivered online is moved online, and that's happened both in the asynchronous as well as a synchronous environment now with everything we've been through this since March. And really utilizing that, what I'll call face-to-face time on campus normally for that hands-on application part of learning. So that was really part of the design. We still have 48-hour courses if it's 3 credits. And it's not that we compressed all of that into 3 hours of face time, right? So we had to divide that out. So naturally, as part of the design of the 8-week calendar, that was one of the intended outcomes of that. And we're seeing it. And certainly COVID has accelerated that and caused us to do more truly online delivery as well.
I guess what I was hoping, Chair Lancaster, is that maybe we could get a follow-up and kind of dig into these numbers a little deeper. I know it's very premature. And again, some of it is COVID driven, but in some cases, like some of these adjustments could be beneficial for the long term. And, I'm just real curious to find out, like, again, what has the true impact been? Like for some working adults or adults that have children, this, offering the online opportunity maybe, or, lack of transportation issues and so on, this whole virtual piece, may actually encourage enrollment as opposed to deter it. And so, and maybe, Victor, I'm obviously making pretty big jumps here, but maybe that's why you're only seeing a 1% drop compared to what you did with the 2% when COVID initially hit. I don't know, but and then to take that even further, I guess this would be a question for Jane and for Jeff. And again, I certainly don't expect responses now, but I'd be curious to see then what, the enrollment, which is driving a lot of this, what that then does to our facility footprint and expenses that are associated with facilities and so on. And again, I'm not the expert on, having, there are certain dollars that we actually have to spend on capital type projects and how that impacts, our levy and so on. And so it gets very complex, but as we move forward, I'm real curious again, the potential opportunity that the circumstances have caused us and what that would mean then for our long-term goals. So, I appreciate, Victor, this data. It's certainly very helpful. Again, I'm really just looking for it, when we can and when we have better data and kind of into this a little further, digging a little deeper into it and then what that means then for the college and our future planning.
I think you made some excellent points, Joe, throughout that. I think there's some real positives here to be gleaned in terms of how we fared through the summer, and certainly the average credit per student going up is something that we desired. I couldn't agree with you more. We're going to have to learn how to read these, because of the nuances to them, and as they become more statistically credible. But yeah, with the 8-week calendar and then just overlaying that with COVID, I totally agree with Joe's thoughts. So if Kaylin, Victor, Jennifer, if we can just make note of that and see how we can perhaps structure that up to be updated, I think that's a great suggestion, Joe.
Yep, I've got notes.
Yeah. Is there something that Chair Lancaster or Board Member Garza that you would like to see on like a regular basis, or?
From my perspective, no, not really. Just as the numbers, like Chair Lancaster just mentioned, as kind of we move through this experience per se, learning from the opportunities, and then what impacts, good and bad. Don't get me wrong. I mean, because some could be good, some could be bad. And I know that you and the team continuously do that. So I'm just really curious on what that could do for the the longer term.
Chair Lancaster, if I could ask Victor or Jane from her CFO meetings, and Victor, if you have anything from your research meetings of maybe similar school sizes and how they are doing, because we all measure FTEs and we all measure head count the same way. We might not all do 8-week calendars, but in the end, it all comes out in the wash. But what are we seeing from some of our other sister brother schools?
Well, I think Jane may have had contact with other colleges. When I do this, I look at the state reporting data, and the state system is not open yet. So sometime in October, usually, maybe late September this year, it will open, and we can start to see. We don't really usually get a safe view of most colleges until October 15th. So that's the first that we would have something about that. But I will also point out that although the FTEs are down only by a couple of percent, that their headcounts are down 7%. And from what I've heard from others, that's probably closer to where other colleges are at. And so the way I've looked at it is that for yet another reason, our timing in implementing the 8-week calendars could not have been better. First, because we had spent all of that time the year before COVID hit in preparing our instructors with professional development for how to use online in hybrid format, but also that now we had classes that allowed students to take that more enrollment at the same time at a time when we really needed it.
Yes.
Hey, Victor.
I would say that we, in our CFO meetings, I meet with the other vice presidents of finance every other Wednesday, and FTE and enrollment is always a topic on our agenda. It's a standing item. So anecdotally, I can report out, though it's not official and it's not reported to the state yet, but my counterparts are all reporting declines that are more than ours. I can't say it's very often. I feel good about a decline in FTE, but this year our decline is less than the others, and that part does feel good. Some are down significantly. A couple of them are close to ours. No one is up out of the 16 colleges. So, and some are down by as much as 11% or more. So we do have some things to feel good about, and I, like Victor, am attributing that to the 8-week and the advanced work we were doing already, so that we handled the transition, I think, very well, and we're seeing the benefit of that right now.
Victor, this is Alan Karch.
Mm-hmm.
Do we track grade point averages?
There is a grade point average that is calculated. I've never been a big proponent of tracking grade point averages for students because it tracks the wrong thing. It really doesn't matter if a student gets an A in a class or a B in a class if both of those students have mastered what is necessary for them to do the job. And so we look at course success rates primarily because that's really the more relevant, that if they're progressing through their programs, if they're being successful in their classes. So what you tend to get with grade point averages is you tend to get a cluster at the top that gets A's on everything, and it skews the numbers for everything else. And that group tends to cause issues with your interpretation when really the interest is not who's getting the A's, the interest is how many students are progressing.
I would agree. What prompted my question was not the quality of the curriculum, but the quality of the outcome, because we know that virtual learning is more difficult than a classroom setting. I'm just wondering what the impact of that will be, how to measure that as an outcome.
Right, and we haven't looked at that yet, but we have been tracking for many years up until now the course success rates in our online courses versus in our standard delivery courses. And the course success rates have been much lower, and almost exclusively because the withdrawal rates are much higher. So the withdrawal rates in our normal courses are about 7 or 8%, and the withdrawal rates in the online courses are 17%, something in that ballpark. And so of the students that stay in the classes, you usually don't see a whole lot of difference, but there's a big withdrawal difference in the online versus non-online. We have not looked yet at how those courses that changed format were affected. As a state, we're actually sort of treating them as a special case and not really trying to make too much one way or the other out of any of that, thinking that that was a one-time event and not to be repeated. But it might be interesting to take a look at.
Yep, I would agree. I would be interested in pursuing that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any additional questions or comments on Victor's presentation?
Yeah, thank you. In addition to tracking that, it would be interesting to follow the online withdrawal rates now that we have so many more of those kinds of courses. If that holds steady at the 17, and if there's ways that we could inch that back up to the normal 7 to 8%. Probably won't happen right away, but over time, I think we could do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's something we've looked at for a long time. It's gotten a little bit better in recent years. For a while, we had a problem in that it was not always apparent to students when they registered when a course was online. And so some students would register for courses and say, oh, this is online, I didn't want that, and then they would withdraw. So that has been made somewhat better, but it continues to be something of an issue. And Randy could talk a lot more about some of the things we've done to try to help with that.
Any other thoughts or comments? Well, Victor, I think you can tell by the level of engagement from the board in the Q&A portion here how much we like your data. So thank you for that, and thank you again for your presentation. I think just if I may speak for the board with this, there's a lot of change here, and we're going to have to figure out collectively how to read this, interpret it, and then use it go forward. Our charge for you as a board is to help us understand our strengths and our weaknesses and the challenges that we face and isolate on those. And then at the end of the day, we need you to help us look through the front window and not the rearview mirror on how to solution those. So thank you for your data, and keep it coming. I always feel a lot more informed after hearing from you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. At this stage, we have completed the open session agenda items. At this point, I would entertain a motion to go into closed session.
Joe Garza.
This
so
is
moved.
Michael Weeb, and I make a motion to convene into closed session pursuant to 19.85, 1C and G, Wisconsin statutes to evaluate of president's search candidates and confer with legal counsel for the college concerning strategy to be adopted by the college with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved.
Joe Garza, second.
Good. Thank you, Michael and Joe, for the motions. Does require a roll call vote. Jennifer?
Chairperson Lancaster,
Aye.
Courtney Bauer,
Aye.
Michael Weeb,
Aye.
Brian Baumgartner,
Aye.
Joe Garza,
Aye.
Alan Karch,
Aye.
Thomas Mahalski,
Aye.
Katie Pansloff,
Aye.
and Julie Valadez.
Aye.
Good. Motion carries. At this time, we will be prompted to move into closed session. Thank you to all the presenters this evening. I believe we have all 16 people. Dave, that was the number that you had come up with previously, correct?
We were at 13.
Added Jane.
Jane, Angie, Todd, and
Excuse me. Take us out of mute, Kristen. Kate, take everybody out of mute.
So at this time, we do not have any motions to act on specifically, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded?
Second.
Roll call vote. Dave Lancaster, aye.
Alan Karch, aye.
Joe
Courtney
Garza.
Bauer.
Aye.
Courtney
Michael
Bauer,
Weber.
aye.
Brian Baumgartner, aye.
Katie Pansloff, aye.
Tom Mihalski, aye.
Motion carries. We stand adjourned. Thank you very much for your time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Aye.